In the last lecture, I introduced mixins, and it's important to understand what mixins really are and what the difference to classes or to extending a class is. So here I'm back in Dartpad, but of course the same code could be run in a Flutter app. Let's start simple. Let's create a new class, a person class. And that's what we did before in Dartpad, and we created classes all the time here in this course thus far. I'll keep this simple. It'll have a name property and age property. Then we might have a constructor which allows us to assign values to the name and the age properties. Now, it's of course no surprise that we can create a new person here with the help of that person constructor by passing values for these arguments. And then here, if we print pers.name and we run this code, and I also fixed this error of having a colon here where we should have a semicolon, we get max here. So that's nothing too new. That's a class. Now you also learned that classes can extend other things. So for example, we could have a class mammal, which in the end has a method, let's say, which doesn't return anything, which is named breathe. And there we just print breathe in, breathe out. Something like that. Now, unsurprisingly, this person can extend mammal. That's also what you learned. Extending classes, a concept called inheritance. That's a core thing of object-oriented programming languages, and therefore Dart has this too. The consequence of person extending mammal is that on the person here, we can now also call breathe. And in addition to that, pers, so this variable now has two types. It is of type person, but it's also of type mammal. So if we had some other place in this application that wants an argument which is of type mammal, we could pass in pers as well, because since it's of type person, which extends mammal, it's automatically also of type mammal. So let's run this code here, and of course we see breathe in, breathe out. So that's working because of inheritance. Now the core idea behind inheritance is that this class, the person class, gets all the properties and methods of the mammal class. You can also override methods there with add override, and then by simply, well, defining the same method here, whoops, breathe, like this, that would be possible. And you got the same type. Now, another important thing you have to understand when using extends and inheritance is that you really are also saying that there should be a strong connection between this class and this class from a logical point of view. So technically, you're just getting all the properties and all the methods, but logically, there also should be a strong connection. So you inherit if you would say that in real life, there would be a connection as well. Now let's have a look at a mixin. You create a mixin with the mixin keyword, and thus far we haven't created one manually, we're just using one provided by Flutter, but here we can create one, and we could name this agility or anything like that. Now let's say there we have a method sit down, where we just print sitting down. Now in a mixin we could also have properties, it's like a class when it comes to that, so we could also have a speed property of 10. And we can now use such a mixin on this class here with the with keyword. There we can use agility, and with that we can, for example, print person speed, because the mixin has a speed property, and by adding a mixin to a class, you get all the properties and methods of that mixin in your class. So person now has the speed property, and it also is able to call sit down. So if I run this, we see 10, that's the speed, and sitting down. So what's the difference between using extends and with then, other than that we use mixin here? The idea behind a mixin is that you can share methods and properties with multiple classes, but logically you have less of a strong connection. A person extends mammal because a person is a mammal. Logically, in real life, you have a strong connection here. Agility is something which could provide utility methods for moving something, for sitting, for doing all kinds of things which are considered agile. We could add that to anything. We could add it to a person, we could add it to a dog, we could add that to objects, we could add that to boxes or to containers if we're building an application that has such things. So anything that can move could have agility, but mammal would really only belong to a person. So the logical relation between that is much stronger than between person and agility. Agility is more like a utility function provider, which we can use to mix certain features into this class. And that's essentially also what we did in the previous lecture. There we added with change notifier to add the utility methods. This gives us the notify listeners method mainly to an existing class. Other than that, there is no strong relation. We just want that utility method in the end. Another important difference is that with inheritance, you can always only inherit from one object, from one class. So person can extend mammal, but we would not be able to extend both mammal and another class. That does not work. Some programming languages support multiple parents. Dart is not one of them. You can only have one parent class. With Mixins, however, you can add as many Mixins as you want. So you can add multiple Mixins to the same class, and all their properties and methods will be merged together in the class. So really think of Mixins as utility functionality providers, whereas when you use inheritance, you really have a strong logical dependency between the two classes.